Greetings, friends. This is Steve Dupuie for the Bible News Prophecy Program with Dr. Bob Thiel. Dr. Thiel, the bird flu has come up on my radar again, and it seems to be getting worse. Should we really be concerned about the bird flu?
Well, the World Health Organization, also called WHO, certainly is. They're concerned that the avian flu, which is the official name of bird flu, or technically H5N1, can spread to humans after there were recent infections reported for both cows and goats. And Jeremy Farrer, who's their chief scientist, he's concerned. So the primary concern is that the virus could further mutate, and then you get from human to human transmission. In the United States, the bird flu, so-called, has been detected in cattle in 8 states. Additionally, someone in Texas contracted the disease, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention did genetic analysis, and they found out that that person had a mutated version of the virus. And they say that the virus closely resembles strains of HPAI, which is also H5N1, but they also say that they have potential vaccines available if necessary.
Well, at least having candidate vaccines readily available should ease fears of contracting the disease.
Well, yeah, for some, but since this virus reemerged back in 2003, 889 human cases have been confirmed, and 463 of them died. The World Health Organization has documented the high mortality rate associated with these infections, and that underscores the nature of the threat.
So, well, a 50% mortality rate isn't exactly all that reassuring. Is there any idea what lies behind the cause of these viruses?
Well, Michael Snyder brought up an interesting one. He says, it's been circulating around the world for a long time. Hundreds of millions of birds have been dead. Now we're finding out that mammals are getting affected, and sometimes humans. And he says the fact that so many types of mammals are being affected is alarming. And he cited from Consumers Union, says epidemiologists scrambled to figure out how come dairy cows throughout the Midwest have been infected with the highly pathogenic avian flu. And said they're looking at a standard recycling practice employed by thousands of farmers across the United States. This is the feeding of animal waste in parts to livestock raised for human consumption. And Michael Hansen, the senior scientist, said, it seems ghoulish, but it's perfectly legal and a common practice for chicken litter. That's the material that accumulates on the floor of chicken growing facilities to be fed to cattle. It's not known if eating chicken trash is why so many cows are getting infected by it. Now, let me comment. One of the reasons that we ended up with what's called mad cow disease came about because humans fed cows, ground up cows, dead cows. They also did that with sheep. And this included infected ones. Now, a cow naturally will not eat meat. The cow would actually die before trying to actually eat meat. But because of greed, some figured out if they ground up animals up and they mix it with sweetened grains, that cows would eat it and they get fatter quicker. But because of the emergence of mad cow disease, that practice was feeding cows, ground up dead cows and sheep, was made illegal and stopped.
So if the practice was stopped, even though it was legal, has that cured the problem?
No, because greed's still around. So instead of doing ground up cows and sheep to cows, they went to pigs for a while, and then they dropped that. But now we're seeing chicken manure, what Consumer Union is calling chicken litter. And the Bible in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10 says that the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And improperly feeding cows that which is against nature is evil. Doesn't matter whether it's not illegal or not. Right. There have already been consequences. And authorities at the World Health Organization are warning that the death rate could be extraordinarily high if such an outbreak of the pandemic were to come about. And the reality is that the bird flu is dangerous. It spreads upon humans. And if it does on a widespread basis, a lot of people are going to die.
Dr. Thiel, if we got through COVID, couldn't we get through the bird pandemic also?
Well, the reality is avian flu could be much worse than COVID. In fact, here's a headline. Bird flu pandemic could be 100 times worse than COVID, scientists warn. It might be on the horizon. It's been spreading rapidly since a new strain was detected in 2020, affecting wild birds in every state, as well as in commercial poultry and backyard flocks. It's now detected in mammals. We mentioned about cows in various states having it. And here's something from Dr. Suresh Kuchipudi, a bird flu researcher from Pittsburgh. This virus has been on the top of the pandemic list for many, many years and probably decades. But now they're worried that it's going to be much, much worse, possibly than COVID. Now, Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24, starting verse 6, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now, a year ago, at the Cogwriter news site, I posted, the bird flu looks to be consistent with Jesus's words.
I can see how the bird flu could contribute to famines and pestilences, but how could it be possible that humans are doing other things that could make this worse?
Well, back in February 2024, someone sent me a link to an article, and here's what it says. U.S. is collaborating with Chinese scientists to make bird flu strains more infectious and deadly as part of a $1 million project, despite similar tests unleashed COVID. And this research involves infecting ducks and geese with different strains of viruses to make them more infectious, to study the virus's potential to jump into mammalian hosts, to other mammals, according to research documents. It's been funded through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, also doing some studies in Georgia, Beijing, and Edinburgh in Scotland. It comes despite similar research being restricted in 2022. What happened was this project was applied for in 2019, approved in 2020, and the specific viruses they're going to work with are the H5NX, H7N9, H9N2. That's what they reported. And then the H5NX is highly pathogenic, and it can cause neurological complications in human beings. And so we see that they've been working on this stuff. Now, back in January 2020, before COVID became very widely known, we put out a video on this channel titled Biological Warfare and Prophecy, warning that what was going on in China was risky, and that's probably where COVID came out of, and warning about some other things that humans had been doing. And sadly, humans keep doing this. The reality is there are risks with scientists working on substances that could be biological weapons or just infections. And that's the case as far as COVID is concerned. Again, I've long ascribed to the lab leak origin theory, and again, went on record at it in January 2020, because as of yet, there's no proof that that was not the origin.
Mm-hmm. Well, does the Bible offer any confirmation that biological pathogens will be worse in the future?
Absolutely. If you go to the book of Revelation, chapter 6, starting in verse 7, the apostle John was inspired to write the following. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and on him, the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades, the grave, followed with him. And death and power was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and the beasts of the earth. Now, the beasts of the earth includes disease epidemics. And you'll notice that the death rate, this will be many, many, many times worse than COVID. And yes, acts by human beings, whether they're scientists or farmers or corporations or just regular consumer people, are setting up the stage for the fulfillment of the ride of the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. And we did another video related to the fourth horseman's ride. It was called Biological Weapons and the Fourth Horseman of the Apocalypse. And we did this based on something when Tucker Carlson interviewed Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., who also trying to run for the United States. During that interview, RFK asserted the United States had thousands of scientists working on making bioweapons. Okay, and don't think that just because they're in the United States they couldn't be released or anything. Maybe could have happened over in Wuhan, but not over here. Don't be so sure. And the other thing that happens, by the way, is that supposedly the United States shared some of the other bio research they did with the Chinese a long time ago, and that could have been a factor in COVID. Even if COVID came from the wild, maybe what U.S. got involved with had something to do with that before. And so that's been going on for quite some time. Humans think that they can control all kinds of things that they can't. And the reality is that this is simply a very dangerous thing. Biological pathogens developed by humans directly in a lab or indirectly in the food supply, they're a real threat.
Well, even though feeding cows dead animals or their parts laced with sweetener is legal, couldn't it be said these labs are simply trying to find a cure for future pathogens?
Certainly, that's their official intent.
Okay.
But there's a couple of problems with that. One is, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pointed out, they can say that's what they're doing, but they're also working on what could be biological weapons. Now, they're not supposed to be working on biological weapons according to various treaties and such, okay? But the reality is when they're working on making things more infectious,
right.
You gotta wonder.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
they claim that that's in order so they can make a better vaccine or some treatment should this come out. But if they wouldn't work on it in the first place, we probably wouldn't run into this thing. Then with COVID, we had the vaccines that were later developed. They weren't developed before, and they weren't as effective as people had hoped they were going to be. So, you know, you got to kind of be very cautious about this. You know, a lot of people have said that biological weapons are the poor man's weapons of mass destruction, because it doesn't take long for, let's say, smaller countries who might get involved with this to release something like this.
True.
So let's say the United States is working with somebody who then gets mad at us or then maybe releases something or gives it to a friend of theirs, which is an enemy of the United States. Anyway, so I don't trust scientists to say they're simply trying to fight them. And they flat out don't know all the risks no matter what they say. I am a published scientist, and actually, oddly, I've actually held a scientist license from the state of Alabama for a couple of decades. And as a scientist, educated person, I can tell you, we don't know everything. Mm-hmm. Humans, directly or indirectly, are going to be a factor in the coming pestilences. And, you know, the ride of the fourth horse of the apocalypse begins after the opening of the fourth seal. And that's the fifth seal, which starts the Great Tribulation.
Okay.
And it could be that some variation of the bird flu could be tied to the opening of the fourth seal of the apocalypse and the ride of that fourth horseman.
Thank you, Dr. Thiel. For more interviews with Dr. Thiel, in addition to written as well as audio articles, visit our website at BibleNewsProphecy.net. This is Steve Dupuie for the Bible News Prophecy Program.